Keep your eyes peeled. Understood. Sector B clear. We're close.
The dog growled once. It was not loud. It was not long. It was the kind of sound a trained animal makes when it has already decided. When the calculation is done and the answer is bad. She stopped moving. One hand came up, open palm, flat. The operator directly in front of her, a SEAL named Driscoll, 12 years in, 2 combat deployments to the Middle East, kept walking for 2 full steps before he registered the signal. He turned back, looked at her, then looked at the dog. What's the problem? Not a question. The tone men use when they already believe the answer is nothing. She did not answer immediately. She was watching the dog. The Belgian Malinois, call sign Castor, had shifted his weight forward onto his front legs. His head was low. His ears were not fixed on a single point.
Back at her, we've got a 2 clicks. Northeast, we don't have time.
They were rotating. Slowly, methodically, like equipment running a sweep. Not one threat, more than one. Something's wrong with the pattern, she said. Driscoll exhaled through his nose, looked at the tree line, looked back at her. We've got a man down 2 clicks northeast. We don't have time for the dog to get spooked by a deer.
You'd really think that mutt knows what it's doing? Maybe she needs a leash on it.
She did not move. Castor did not move. The forest around them was quiet in the specific way that forests go quiet when something inside them is watching and waiting. Not peaceful, suspended. Behind Driscoll, 2 more operators had closed the gap. One of them, a younger man named Fitch, glanced at the dog, then at her and said it out loud. The thing Driscoll had only implied. Handler's got cold feet. The animal's reading her, not the woods. He said it without lowering his voice. Said it the way people say things they want heard. She did not look at Fitch. She kept her eyes on Castor. Handler, Driscoll said. The word landed with the weight of category, of assignment, of diminishment. We move. Castor had not relaxed, not even slightly. Not yet, she said. Her name was Specialist Vera Caldas, 27 years old, 5 feet 6 inches of nothing that anyone in that tree line would have flagged as a threat. She had been assigned to the team 48 hours earlier. No ceremony, no introduction beyond a name on a manifest and a kennel number. The official paperwork listed her as a military working dog handler, attached for the duration of a personnel recovery operation in the Appalachian training corridor. A stretch of federal land in western North Carolina where the terrain was steep, the ravines were deep, and the cell signal had not worked reliably since 2019. The missing operator was a SEAL petty officer named Gaza. He had gone dark during a solo reconnaissance movement the previous evening. Last known position, a ridge approximately 2 kilometers northeast of where they were standing. No distress signal, no contact, just silence on the net and a blinking GPS icon that had not moved in 11 hours. Command had authorized a 4-man recovery element with handler support. The 4-man element was Driscoll's team. Handler support was Vera. Nobody had asked for her specifically. The request had gone up the chain as a standard K9 attachment. Terrain tracking, possible scent trail, navigate dense vegetation. What came back down was Vera and Castor, already loaded on the helo, already geared, already reading the mission file before anyone had thought to brief them.
Men note things they intend to. After the mission, when there is more time.
Driscoll had noted that. He had not said anything about it. He had noted it the way experienced men note things they intend to examine later, after the mission, when there is more time to be right. The team leader was a warrant officer named Breckenridge, CW3, 14 years of service. He had the kind of face that had stopped showing surprise around year 7 and had not resumed since. He was currently positioned 30 meters back along the trail, monitoring the radio and maintaining a visual on both flanks. When Driscoll signaled back, 2 fingers, then a flat palm, then a question mark formed with the same 2 fingers. Breckenridge moved forward without urgency. He arrived at the halt position, read Driscoll's expression, read Fitch's posture, then looked at Vera. Then he looked at Castor. The dog was still locked in that low, forward stance, still rotating those ears across a wide arc, still refusing to release the alert. "How long has he been on it?" Breckenridge asked. 90 seconds, Vera said. "Maybe more. What's he telling you?" She paused for exactly the right amount of time. Not hesitation, assessment. He's not on a single source. He's scanning multiple points. That's not a scent trail. That's distributed presence. Breckenridge looked at the tree line ahead, then left, then right. The forest gave him nothing. Green, shadow, the sound of water somewhere downhill, a bird that had gone quiet 3 minutes ago and had not resumed. "Distributed," he repeated. "Yes, sir." Fitch made a sound that was almost a laugh. Not quite. Enough. Breckenridge did not look at Fitch. He looked at Vera. "Give me 30 seconds, he said. It was not permission. It was not dismissal. It was the first thing anyone had said to her since the helo that treated her assessment as a variable worth measuring. She gave him the 30 seconds. Castor did not move. Vera had learned to read Castor the way some people learn to read weather.
Tango 7 to base. We have movement. Confirming location now.
Not by memorizing charts, by watching long enough that the pattern stopped being data and started being language. Castor was a 6-year-old Belgian Malinois, 81 pounds, trained through a program that did not advertise itself and did not appear in any public-facing military working dog registry. He had been matched to Vera after a selection process she had been told was routine, and that she privately knew was not. He had been through 2 overseas deployments before she met him. He carried 2 healed injuries, one to the left shoulder, one to the rear left haunch, that showed up on X-rays and nowhere else. He did not spook. That was the first thing she had learned about him, and it remained the most important. Castor did not react to deer, did not react to wind shifts in the canopy, did not react to the sound of other animals moving through undergrowth. He had been conditioned to filter all of that out with the same systematic precision that had made him exceptional at his job. When Castor reacted, it was because something had crossed a threshold that he had been specifically built to detect. What Vera was watching now was not a reaction. It was an evaluation. His head had dropped 2 inches below neutral, a posture she associated with distance assessment, with the dog calculating not just that something was present, but where and how far, and in how many directions. His weight had shifted forward, but not fully committed, which meant he had not isolated a primary target. His ears moved in a pattern she had started calling the sweep, a slow left-to-right rotation that paused at irregular intervals, each pause corresponding to a point of interest she could not see but had learned to map based on where his ears stopped. She counted 6 pauses in the last 90 seconds. 6 distinct points, not random, not clustered, distributed in a rough arc. Ahead left, left flank deeper, ahead right, right flank. Like points on a perimeter, like positions that had been chosen deliberately to bracket something moving through the middle. Something like a 4-man team and a handler. She did not say that out loud. She catalogued it. Behind her, Driscoll was running the math on time versus mission urgency. She could hear it in the way he shifted his weight. The small sounds of a man preparing to override a judgment he had already decided was wrong. Custer paused on the left flank deeper position. Held it. 2 full seconds. Then his lips drew back. Not a full snarl. The beginning of one. The punctuation at the end of a sentence that had been building for 90 seconds. Vera felt the ground shift under the situation. Not literally, but something had just changed in the geometry of the next few minutes, and she was the only person in that clearing who knew what it was. Driscoll checked his watch. Then he checked it again, which was the tell. 30 seconds are up, he said to Breckenridge. We need to move. Breckenridge had not stopped watching the dog. Give her another 30. Sir, Gaza has been dark for 11 hours. Every minute we stand here, I know the math, Driscoll. The warrant officer's voice did not rise. It did not need to. 14 years had compressed it into something that communicated finality without effort. Driscoll went quiet, but his jaw set in a way that said the conversation was not finished, only paused. Vera did not look at either of them. She was tracking Custer's ear positions and cross-referencing them against the terrain. The way the ridge dropped off to the left into a ravine choked with mountain laurel and rhododendron. The way the trail curved gently right before opening into a small clearing another 120 meters ahead. The way the high ground on the right flank would give a patient observer an almost unobstructed sight line down the entire approach. She had noted the high ground when they inserted. She had marked it as a concern and filed it in the part of her mind reserved for things she could not verify yet. Custer was verifying it now. His ear paused on the right flank position again. 2 seconds, then 3. Vera moved her hand to his collar, not to restrain him, to feel the vibration in his neck, the subvocal tension that registered before a full vocalization, the muscular equivalent of a pressure gauge reading. It was elevated, not spiked, elevated, which in Custer's vocabulary meant confirmed, multiple, patient. Patient was worse than aggressive. Patient meant people who had chosen their positions and were waiting for a specific trigger. Patient meant a closing pattern, not a random encounter. She turned to Breckenridge, the high ground on the right. Someone's been there long enough to have a sight picture on this trail. Breckenridge looked at the ridge. It was maybe 40 meters of elevation above them, covered in hardwood and granite outcroppings. You're reading that from the dog. I'm reading it from the dog and from the trail pattern and from the fact that the bird noise on our left dropped out before the bird noise on our right did, which means whatever moved through there came from the right side first. Fitch said, quietly but not quietly enough, she's building a story. Breckenridge did not respond to Fitch. He said to Vera, if you're right, what's the play? She started to answer. That was when Driscoll, without waiting for the conversation to resolve, started moving forward up the trail. "Gaza doesn't have time for this," he said. "I'm not standing here while my guy is down." He had gone 6 steps before Vera processed what was happening. Castor went rigid. Every muscle in the dog locked simultaneously. His rear dropped 2 inches. His tail went flat and still. His head came up, not down, up, which in his vocabulary meant one thing and one thing only: imminent. "Driscoll!" Her voice came out flat and hard in a way she had not planned. "Stop." He took another step. "Driscoll, do not take another step." He stopped, turned. His expression was somewhere between irritation and something else. Something that had not yet decided if it was going to be anger or alarm. Castor had not moved, but he was shaking. Finally, like a tuning fork after the strike, the vibration of an animal holding a full alert posture under maximum restraint. Breckenridge saw it. He had seen enough working dogs to know what that posture meant. He put his hand on Driscoll's shoulder. "Stand still," the warrant officer said. And for the first time since they had inserted, the team was completely, absolutely still. Nobody spoke. The silence lasted 4 seconds, maybe 5. In that kind of terrain, in that kind of situation, 5 seconds is a very long time. Castor held his position, vibrating, patient, certain. Then Vera felt the collar pull. Not hard, not frantic, deliberate. The specific directional pressure of a dog who has made a decision and is communicating it with the precision of something that has been trained to be understood. The pull was to the left, down the slope, off the trail, into the ravine. She looked at Breckenridge. He looked at the dog. Then he looked at the trail ahead. The curve, the clearing beyond it, the high ground on the right, all of it suddenly arranged in a geometry that was no longer ambiguous. "Off trail," he said. "Left, now, quiet." Driscoll opened his mouth. "Now, Driscoll." They went left. It was not a clean movement. The ravine slope was steep and wet, covered in a layer of decomposing leaves that compressed silently underfoot, but wanted to slide. Vera moved with Castor, letting the dog set the pace and the line, trusting the animal's read of the ground in a way that looked to anyone watching like she was following him. She was. That was the correct thing to do. She knew it. Castor knew the terrain through his feet and his nose in ways that no map had captured. They descended maybe 12 meters, found a natural depression behind a granite shelf. A position with overhead cover, concealment on 3 sides, and a narrow sight line back up toward the trail they had just left. Breckenridge pulled in beside her. Driscoll and Fitch folded in behind. All 4 of them were below the trail line now, invisible from the ridge, invisible from the clearing ahead. Castor sat, his breathing slowed. The vibration in his neck dropped by half. Better, safer, still not clear. Vera pressed her radio transmit, said nothing, just clicked twice, the prearranged signal for position change without contact. The radio crackled once in return. Command copy. Then, from somewhere ahead and above, from the clearing they had been 30 seconds from walking into, there was a sound. Not a gunshot. Not a voice. A branch. Specifically, the sound of a branch under deliberate weight. The sound of something that had been patient and was no longer patient because the thing it was waiting for had failed to arrive. One sound, then nothing. But the nothing was different now. It had texture. Driscoll was pressed against the granite shelf to her left. She could see his face in profile. She watched him process the sound, watched the arithmetic change behind his eyes. The subtraction of certainty he had carried up that trail for the last 20 minutes, replaced by something more uncomfortable and more correct. He did not look at her. Not yet. Have you ever been in a situation where you knew something was wrong before you could explain it? Where the evidence was real, but nobody around you was ready to hear it? Drop something in the comments. I want to know if this has ever happened to you. Custer leaned his weight against Vera's leg. She put her hand on his back. Good boy, she thought. Good boy. The ravine was cold, not the ambient cold of late afternoon in the mountains. The specific cold of a place that gets very little sun and stays wet long after the rain has passed. The kind of cold that finds the seams in your gear and works its way in. Vera noticed it the way she noticed most things. Registered, filed, not acted upon unless relevant. She had been in colder places. On her left shoulder, under the sleeve of her field jacket, there was a scar that ran 4 inches parallel to the collarbone. Clean line. Old now. Pale against her skin, it did not affect range of motion, and it did not come up in conversation, because she did not bring it up in conversation. She had been 23 when she got it. Operating in a different theatre with a different unit and a different dog. A shepherd named Kilo, who had not made it out of that deployment. She did not talk about Kilo either. She carried him in the specific way that people carry things that mattered. Quietly and at the center, and without needing to explain it to anyone. Custer was not Kilo, but Custer had been assigned to her by someone who had read her file. The full file, not the redacted version that went out to attached elements. And had decided that what she needed next was a dog with a particular kind of patience. A dog that had been through enough to have calibrated certainty, not reaction. Someone had made a specific choice. She had thanked nobody for it. She had simply accepted the assignment and gotten to work. What was in the full file was not something she announced. It was not something she carried on her sleeve, literally or otherwise. But it was there, folded into her the way experience folds into people who have done the job long enough, visible only in the moments when the situation required it. In the way she had read the bird's silence, in the way she had cross-referenced the terrain against Custer's ear positions without a map in her hands, in the way she had said distributed presence to a warrant officer she had met 48 hours ago, and had not needed to define the term. She had been doing this for 5 years. She had started at 22, in a program that did not appear in recruiting materials, attached to a unit that operated in terrain categories that made this North Carolina ravine look like a park. She had learned the work from a handler named Sergeant First Class Reyes. Retired now, both knees gone, still consulting, who had told her on the first day, "The dog tells you the truth. Your job is to speak his language well enough to translate it for people who weren't born knowing how to listen." She had taken that seriously. She had taken it seriously in 3 countries, 2 conflict zones, and 1 circumstance that was classified at a level that meant the citation that came with it was delivered in a room with no windows, and filed in a system she was not allowed to reference on her service record without prior authorization. There was a patch on the inside of her pack, not visible, not displayed, that corresponded to that citation. She had put it on the inside because the people who needed to know already knew, and the people who didn't need to know didn't matter. Breckenridge was crouched 2 feet to her right, monitoring the radio, his face turned slightly up toward the ridgeline. He was a careful man. She had decided that in the first 10 minutes of the operation. Careful was good. Careful meant he was still measuring. Fitch, on the other hand, had gone quiet in the way people go quiet when they are recalibrating something they said out loud and are hoping no one remembers. She remembered. She always remembered. She did not do anything with it. That was not the job. The job was to get the team through the terrain, to translate what Castor was telling her, and to make the people around her faster and safer, whether they wanted her to or not. Castor shifted against her leg again. His breathing was steady now. The sweep had stopped. He was monitoring, holding, waiting for the next signal from the environment. She did the same. The radio clicked. One transmission. Command frequency. The voice on the other end was calm, in the way that command voices are calm when the situation has changed and they are deciding how much to say. Ridgeline element, be advised, we have possible multiple thermal signatures in your operational area. Assess and hold. Over. Breckenridge keyed his radio. Copy. Holding. Can you give me positions? A pause. 3 seconds. Negative on exact positions. Bird is reading heat scatter, consistent with multiple individuals using terrain masking. Pattern suggests coordinated placement. Over. Coordinated placement. Vera heard that and felt the information lock into place alongside everything Castor had given her in the last 20 minutes. The 6 ear pause points, the distributed arc, the high ground with the sight line, the branch sound from the clearing. Not an ambush of opportunity, a prepared position. Someone had been here before them, had surveyed the approach, had selected the clearing as the natural funnel, the place where a 4-man recovery element moving to a GPS coordinate on a ridge would emerge from the tree cover, briefly, clearly, in the open. The kind of position that gets chosen by people who know how military search elements move. The kind of position that gets abandoned when the element stops short. "Sir," Vera said. Breckenridge looked at her. The clearing was the kill zone. They funneled the trail to it. The curve in the path before the opening. It removes your lateral sight lines for about 40 meters. You can't see left or right. You can only see forward, into the open. By the time you're in the clearing, you're already inside the arc. Breckenridge was quiet for 2 seconds. You mapped that walking in? Yes, sir. Before the dog signaled. I mapped it as a concern. Castor confirmed it. Driscoll had shifted position to hear the exchange. He was listening now with the full attention of a man who has put his foot on a step that wasn't there. The specific quality of attention that comes after certainty fails. "How do we move?" Breckenridge asked. Vera looked at Castor. The dog had his attention on the ravine floor ahead of them, downhill, following the natural drainage line away from the trail, moving parallel to the ridge but below it, invisible from the high ground above. We follow the drainage. It runs northeast. We stay below the ridgeline, below their sight lines. The scent line to Gaza's last position should still be accessible if we come up from the low side of the ridge rather than the high trail. Distance? Longer. Maybe 600 meters of rough terrain versus 200 on trail. Time? 25 minutes, maybe 30. Driscoll said quietly, or we could have been in the clearing in 4. Nobody responded to that. Breckenridge said, "Lead." Just the one word. Vera stood. Castor stood with her, already orienting toward the drainage line, already reading the scent pattern on the air, moving up through the ravine from the lower ground. She moved. The team followed. No further discussion. No vote. The warrant officer had given her the front of the movement, and the team had accepted it, and that was the entire conversation. They went into the ravine. The drainage line was not a trail. It was a suggestion of movement, a slight depression in the ground where water ran during rain, bordered by exposed root systems and loose shale that wanted to shift underfoot. Moving it required weight discipline, patience, and the willingness to go slow when every instinct said faster. Castor moved through it like he had always been there. Vera moved 4 steps behind him, reading his pace and his posture the way a translator reads a speaker. Not transcribing word by word, but understanding the full sentence before it finishes. Behind her, Breckenridge, then Fitch, then Driscoll at rear security. Single file, no talking, hand signals only when necessary. They had been moving for 11 minutes when Castor slowed. Not stopped, slowed. A modulation that Vera recognized as the difference between a new alert and a familiar one. His head came up. His nostrils worked. Then his tail made a single low movement. Not an alert flag, not a freeze. Something more specific. Known scent. Positive association. Living source. Gaza. Vera raised her fist. Team stopped. She crouched. Castor moved beside her, nose working the upslope air. The scent was coming from above and to the right, carried down by the drainage airflow, concentrated enough after 11 hours to be readable. She clicked her radio twice. Breckenridge moved forward to her position. She pointed up the slope, held up one finger, made a circle with her index finger, the K9 signal for confirmed individual scent, single source. He nodded, keyed his radio. Command, Ridgeline. K9 confirms scent on possible casualty. Moving to location. Thermal signatures still in your picture? A pause. Ridgeline. Thermal pattern has shifted. 2 signatures moved off the ridge approximately 6 minutes ago. Direction of movement suggests they lost your position. You may be clear on the approach. Use caution. Over. Breckenridge exhaled slowly. 6 minutes ago. Vera did the math. 6 minutes ago, she and Castor had been at the bottom of the drainage line. Below the ridge, below the thermal layer that the aerial asset could read. The team had been invisible. The positions in the high ground had lost their trigger. The element they were waiting for had disappeared and had moved to reacquire. And now there were 2 signatures somewhere in the terrain, looking for a team they had last seen on a trail that no longer had anyone on it. We need to be on Gaza before they reacquire us, Vera said. Agreed. Can he take us straight to the position? She looked at Castor. The dog was already oriented, already angled uphill, toward the scent, toward the source, with the focused certainty of an animal that has made the connection and is waiting for permission to close it. He already knows where to go, she said. Breckenridge looked at the slope, steep, loose rock, 40 meters of elevation gain in terrain that would sound like a construction site if they moved fast. Slow and quiet, he said. Always, she said. They started uphill. Castor led. Gaza was alive, That was the first thing. The relief of it arriving before anything else. The specific exhale of a team that has been carrying the weight of not knowing for 11 hours and has just been permitted to put it down. He was wedged into a narrow cut in the granite, a natural shelf in the rock face, partially concealed by a collapse of deadfall that had come down sometime in the last season and had not been cleared. He had not chosen the position randomly. He had crawled into it with what remained of his capability after an injury to his right leg, a fracture mid-tibia from a fall on the shale slope the previous evening. And he had stayed there, immobile, maintaining radio silence because his radio had sustained damage in the fall and was transmitting only intermittently, and because he had heard movement below him through the night that told him staying quiet was the correct calculation. He had been making correct calculations for 11 hours with a broken leg and a dead radio in the dark. Custer found him in 40 seconds from the point where the scent lock became a straight line. The dog moved to him without aggression, a low approach controlled, the behavior of an animal that has been trained to differentiate between a threat and a survivor, between someone who needed to be located and someone who needed to be calmed. He pressed his nose gently against Gaza's forearm, held it there. Gaza looked at the dog. Then he looked at Vera. Then at the team coming up behind her. "Took you long enough," he said. His voice was flat and dry in the way of men who have been through enough that irony becomes a survival mechanism. "You picked a difficult spot," Vera said. "I picked the only spot. I know." She was already crouching, running hands along the leg. Not to treat, she was not the medic, but to assess before the medic arrived. The fracture was mid-shaft, no visible displacement, no arterial compromise. Painful, manageable. He had splintered it himself with 2 sticks and the sleeve of his base layer. Driscoll moved in. He had the medical kit. He was efficient. There was no other word for it. Whatever the last 90 minutes had done to his certainty, it had not touched his competence. He worked the leg quickly and correctly. Breckenridge was on the radio. "Command Ridgeline, we have the package. Ambulatory negative. 1 fracture, stable. Requesting extraction coordinates and updated thermal picture. Over." The response came back in 12 seconds. "Ridgeline, 2 signatures still active in your area. Current position suggests they are moving back toward the original trail. You have a window. Recommend extraction via low ground route back to LZ. K9 element to lead. Confirm. Over." Breckenridge looked at Vera. She did not wait for him to ask. "Custer can take us back the same way we came up. The drainage line is below their thermal layer. If we move now, we beat their reacquisition by about 15 minutes. And if we don't move now, then we have a different conversation." Breckenridge almost smiled. It was a small movement, the kind that people with 14 years develop as a substitute for the full expression. "Command Ridgeline confirmed. K9 element leading, moving to LZ. Over." He closed the radio channel and looked at the team. Then he said something that had not been said yet, in any form, in any tone, in any way. Something that required no announcement, but existed as information, as a correction to the record. He looked at Vera. "Good call on the trail," he said. Just that. 4 words. In front of Driscoll, in front of Fitch, in front of Gaza, who was being helped to his feet with one arm over Driscoll's shoulder. 4 words, and the weight that came with them. The specific weight of a senior man with 14 years of calibrated judgment choosing to name a thing in public. Driscoll looked at his boots for a moment. Then he looked up. He said nothing. But something had shifted in the geometry of the team. Quietly and without announcement, the way weight redistributes after a load-bearing point changes. The movement back down was harder than the movement up. Gaza could not bear weight on the right leg. Driscoll had him on his left shoulder, which meant Driscoll was navigating the shale slope with one arm committed, one hand available, and 180 pounds of combined weight on terrain that did not cooperate. He did it without complaint, without asking for help until Fitch moved in on the other side without being asked. That was the first thing Vera noted about Fitch since the moment on the trail. Not absolution, just data. Castor moved ahead of the group by 8 to 10 meters, far enough to read the terrain before they entered it, close enough for Vera to read him. She was running the same threat calculation she had been running since the drainage line. 2 signatures in the area, last seen moving back toward the original trail. If they held that line, if they were disciplined and patient, and stayed on the high trail looking for the element they had lost, then the low drainage route was clean. If they were not disciplined, if they split and one came down slope, the window narrowed. Castor's posture told her which it was. He moved clean, fluid, no pauses, no ear sweeps. His tail was at neutral. His head was low in the tracking posture rather than the alert posture, following Gaza's scent backward along the route they had used to come up, retracing the line with the ease of an animal doing the simplest version of something it knows very well. Clear. For now. She let herself breathe in the careful way. Not relief, not yet, but a reduction in the sharpest part of the readiness. Behind her, she could hear Gaza moving, the sounds of a man who was in significant pain and was managing it with the same controlled economy he had managed 11 hours in a rock crevice. No unnecessary noise, no commentary. She had not spoken to him directly beyond the initial exchange. That was correct. He needed his breath for the movement, and she needed hers for the dog. At the 8-minute mark, Castor paused. She stopped. The team stopped behind her. Castor's head came up. One ear rotated left. Held 1 point. Not a sweep. A single fixed source. Vera estimated direction and distance from the ear angle. Left flank. Elevated. Stationary. One of the 2 signatures. She turned to Breckenridge. Used the hand signals. 1 finger, left flank, elevated, stationary. He read it, looked at the terrain, calculated the distance from their current position to the point she had indicated. He gave the signal. Angle right, increase pace, do not stop. They angled right. Castor adjusted without instruction. He had already felt the change in her body language and had begun the course correction before the signal finished. That was 5 years of partnership expressed in 2 seconds of movement. They cleared the angled section in 4 minutes. The signature did not move. Stationary, holding, unaware they had passed below it. At the drainage mouth, where the ravine flattened and the LZ sat another 200 meters into the trees, Castor stopped completely and sat. Done. Clear. He looked up at Vera with the expression that was not an expression, that was a reading. The quiet, certain look of an animal that has completed its task and is reporting that the environment is no longer hostile. She crouched beside him, 1 hand on his neck. He leaned into it. The helicopter came in low and fast over the tree line, rotated once and settled onto the LZ in a wash of rotor noise and displaced leaves. It was a 4-minute flight back to Fob Ridgeline. 4 minutes is not long enough for a full conversation. It is exactly long enough for the beginning of one. Gaza was loaded first, then the team, then Vera and Castor. She sat across from Driscoll in the cargo bay, the dog between her knees, the noise of the rotors filling in all the space where conversation might otherwise have happened. Driscoll was looking at his hands, not at her, not at Gaza, at his hands, the specific posture of a man who is processing something that does not have a clean resolution. She did not push it. That was not her job, and it was not her style. And she had learned a long time ago that the men who needed to say something eventually said it, and the men who never said it were telling her something too. The helo landed. Gaza was transferred to the medical element waiting on the pad. The team moved into the operations building for the debrief. The debrief was run by a major named Holcomb. She had not met him before. He was compact, methodical, and he ran through the sequence of events the way people run through sequences they have already partially reconstructed from radio traffic and aerial data. He got to the point where the team had deviated from the planned route. "Walk me through the decision to go off trail," he said. Looking at Breckenridge. Breckenridge said flatly, "Specialist Caldas assessed the planned route as a prepared ambush position based on K9 alert pattern and terrain analysis. I concurred and redirected the element." Holcomb looked at Vera. "K9 alert pattern," he said, not skepticism, something more like precision. Castor identified multiple distributed heat and scent sources in an arc consistent with a coordinated placement, Vera said. The pattern matched a funneling approach. The trail curved to remove lateral vision before opening into a clearing that would have been inside the arc. I assessed the clearing as a prepared kill zone. Holcomb was quiet for a moment. Aerial thermal confirmed 2 signatures in that area, he said. They did not make contact because the element was no longer on the trail. "Yes, sir." "How long had the dog been giving you that read before the team deviated?" "Approximately 4 minutes of active alert before I called the full halt. The initial signal started around 2 minutes before that. 6 minutes total." "Yes, sir." Holcomb made a note. Then he looked up and looked at the room, at Breckenridge, at Driscoll, at Fitch, and at Vera. "For the record," he said, "the route deviation and the decision to follow K9 assessment avoided a direct engagement with at least 2 hostiles in a prepared position. Gaza was recovered. The element exfiltrated without casualties." He paused. "That is not a routine outcome. That is a correct outcome." He looked at Vera specifically. The K9 read and the terrain analysis were accurate. The call was correct. Fitch was looking at the table. Driscoll was looking at Holcomb. Then, slowly, at Vera. And when she met his eyes, not challenging, not triumphant, just level and clear, he gave her a single small nod. Not an apology. Not quite. But the beginning of one. The part that comes before words. When a man who has been wrong in a specific way acknowledges it to the person he was wrong about. And both of them understand what it means without requiring it to be said in full. That was enough. That was, in fact, more than she had expected. What happened in that room, in that debrief, the major naming it out loud, in the record in front of the team, was the kind of correction that does not get undone. You cannot unname a thing that has been named in a room full of people who were there. Driscoll knew that. Fitch knew it too. And here's the thing about that moment. And I want you to think about this genuinely. When someone with that much experience in a room like that says for the record, and then names the specific thing that was done correctly, that is not a small gesture. That is a man with rank and institutional credibility choosing to put something permanent in the record. He did not have to do that. He chose to. Because the call was correct and the record should reflect it. Who deserved that moment more? The team that kept pushing, or the one who held the line? Leave your answer below. I'll be reading. The medical element confirmed the tibia fracture was clean. Gaza would be on crutches for 6 weeks. He would be operational in 12. He had been told this in the tone that military doctors use when they are delivering good news they know will be received as bad news, because the person receiving it is already calculating the weeks they are losing rather than the weeks they are keeping. He said thank you, meant it, was already thinking about the recovery timeline. Vera heard this second-hand from Breckenridge, who stopped by the equipment room where she was cleaning Castor's paws and checking him over, checking the pads, the ears, the coat, the joints, with the systematic attention of someone who understands that the dog has no way of filing a complaint if something hurts. Gaza's going to be fine, Breckenridge said. Good, she said. He stood there for a moment. She continued working on Castor. You mapped that clearing on the way in, he said. It was not a question this time. He had had 3 hours to think about it since the debrief. I had a concern. I couldn't confirm it without Castor. But you were already building the picture. Terrain analysis is part of the job. It's part of some versions of the job, he said. Not all of them. She looked up at that. He was watching her with the expression she had categorized in the first minutes of the operation. Careful, measuring, still. Where were you before this? He asked. She considered how much to answer. A program that doesn't recruit, she said. He nodded slowly. He was not the kind of man who needed a complete sentence when a partial one was accurate. The full file, he said. Yes, sir. He looked at Castor, who was tolerating the poor inspection with the long-suffering patience of an animal that has concluded this is non-negotiable. He's good, Breckenridge said. He's exceptional, she said. There was no self-consciousness in it. Precision was not arrogance. The warrant officer turned to go, stopped at the doorway. Next operation in this corridor is in 72 hours, he said. Same team, same area of operations, different objective. I'm going to request you stay attached. She nodded. He left. Castor looked at her. She scratched behind his ear. The left one, the one that always ran hot after a long alert day. The one that needed the extra attention. He closed his eyes. She was packing her kit when Driscoll appeared in the doorway. He did not knock. There was no door to knock on. He appeared and he stood there, and he waited to be noticed, which was its own kind of courtesy. The kind that does not announce itself as courtesy, but is. She noticed him, continued packing for a moment, then set the kit down. Castor looked at Driscoll, made no sound, returned his attention to the wall. That was, in its own way, a form of absolution. The dog had categorized Driscoll as not a threat, had done so from the beginning, and had simply been waiting for the humans to catch up. I owe you something, Driscoll said. She waited. He was not a man who built to things. He said the next sentence the same way he had said everything else, directly, without performance.
Men know
I was
things
going
they
to
intend
walk
to.
into that clearing. Yes, she said.
After the mission, when
If
there
you
is more
hadn't
time.
held the line, if Castor hadn't, he stopped, restarted. Gaza would have been extracted regardless. But we might have had a different conversation about who was going home. She looked at him. You had a man down, she said. That's not a flaw. That's what you're built for. It made me stupid. It made you fast. Fast and stupid are not always the same thing. Today, they were close. He almost smiled. A different kind of almost than Breckenridge's. This one had more edges. Fitch is 26, he said. He's got about another year before he stops talking, before he thinks. Just so you know where that came from. I know where it came from, she said. I've been 26. Fair. He looked at Castor. Does he always know? Driscoll asked. Or did we just get lucky that he was having a good day? She thought about Kilo, about the shepherd who had been exceptional on the worst day of her service and had not survived it, about Reyes and the thing he had said about speaking the dog's language. I always remember, she thought. I carry it. I do not need to explain it. He's never wrong about a pattern, she said. He might miss a single source in bad conditions. He has never been wrong about a pattern. Driscoll nodded. Then he did something she had not expected. He crouched down to Castor's level. The dog looked at him. Driscoll extended his hand. Not to the dog's face, not above his head, but low, palm up, at chest height. The correct way. The way that takes a second of thought from someone who doesn't work with dogs regularly. Castor sniffed his hand, then leaned forward slightly and pressed his forehead against Driscoll's knuckles. Driscoll stayed there for a moment, then stood. He said nothing else. He left the same way he had arrived, directly, without announcement, without ceremony. Vera looked at the empty doorway. I always remember, she thought again, but I also know which things to put down. There's something that happens in units after moments like that one.
Tango 7
It
to
does
base.
not get announced.
We have movement.
There is no
Confirming
ceremony for
location
it.
now.
No paragraph in the after-action report. No entry in any document that would survive a records request. What happens is simpler than that and more durable. People change what they do, not what they say, not how they explain themselves in retrospect. What they do, the small operational decisions, the instinctive responses, the way a team organizes itself before it has been told to. In the 72 hours before the next operation, Driscoll ran a terrain analysis brief for the team. He had not been asked to. He incorporated canine alert behavior into the brief as a primary intelligence category. Not a supplemental one, not a handler consideration, a primary intelligence category. Alongside radio traffic, aerial thermal, and human reconnaissance. He did not explain why he had changed the framework. He did not reference the clearing or the drainage line or the sound of a branch under deliberate weight. He simply built the brief correctly. Fitch, for his part, had been doing something specific since the debrief that Vera had noticed and had not commented on. He had been watching Castor, not nervously, not with the performative interest of someone trying to be seen to have changed their position. Watching in the way people watch things they have decided they do not understand yet and have resolved to understand better. He had asked her on the second day how canine alert differentiation worked. Specifically, how a handler distinguishes a single source alert from a distributed source alert from a track alert. She had told him. He had listened without interrupting. He would not have asked that question 48 hours earlier. That was the change. Not a speech, not an apology. A question asked by someone who had decided they needed to know something they had previously decided they didn't need to know. Breckenridge's request was approved. The attachment was extended. Vera and Castor stayed. They ran 3 more operations in that corridor over the next 6 weeks, 2 recovery missions and 1 area assessment. On all 3, the element went off trail at least once based on Castor's read. On all 3, the deviation was correct. Nobody debated it after the first time. Not because they were told not to, because the evidence had already spoken. There is a specific kind of respect that develops in operational environments that does not look like any of the respect you've been taught to recognize. It does not come with ceremony or with words. It comes with behavior, with the way a team adjusts its formation to account for you, with the way the most senior man on the element defaults to your assessment when the terrain gets complicated, with the way people stop asking you to justify the read and start asking you to make it. That is the respect that lasts. The other kind, the polite kind, the performed kind, the kind that shows up after a briefing or a commendation. That kind has a half-life. It fades when the pressure rises. What Vera had built in that ravine, in that drainage line, in that moment when she said not yet and meant it and was right, that did not fade. It became infrastructure. 6 weeks later, on the last morning before the attachment ended, Vera ran Castor through his standard post-deployment assessment. Obstacle navigation, scent discrimination under distraction, directional control at distance, recall under simulated stress. He passed everything with the margin of an animal that had been doing this long enough to have stopped trying and started simply being. Breckenridge watched from the edge of the assessment area. He had not been asked to watch. He was there because he had decided to be there. And the warrant officer's presence had attracted Driscoll, and Driscoll's presence had attracted Fitch. And by the end of the obstacle run, there were 4 members of the element standing at the edge of the field watching a dog work. Nobody said anything for a while. Then Fitch said, quietly, to no one in particular, "He saw it before all of us." Driscoll looked at the dog, then at Vera. "He felt it," he said. He was quoting her from the first day in the clearing, before any of the rest of it had happened. The sentence she had said to him when he had made the same observation. He said it without irony, without performance, just returned the sentence to her correctly, as a completed thought. She did not respond. She brought Castor back to heel, ran the final recall. He came fast and clean and sat perfectly at her left knee, looking up at her with the direct, uncomplicated certainty of an animal that has decided this is exactly where it is supposed to be. She scratched behind his left ear. He closed his eyes. In closed terrain, in places where the map runs out and the trail disappears, and what you know for certain stops being enough, the instinct of something trained to tell the truth is not a supplement to the mission. It is the mission. And the people who understand that before they are proven wrong, who make room for the read before the evidence arrives, those people come home. The others learn eventually. Some of them get the chance. Fitch got it right on the last day. Not everything. Not all of it, but the part that mattered. He stopped her at the equipment cage, pack already loaded for the transport helo, Caster at her side. He said, "I'm going to ask for a handler attachment on the next rotation." She looked at him. "Good," she said. "I'm going to ask for a good one. That's the right ask." He nodded, started to go, then turned back. "How do you know?" he said. "When the dog is telling you something real versus when he's just reacting to noise?" She thought about Reyes, about the first day, about the things she had been told that had turned out to be true for 5 years and counting. "You learn his language," she said, "and then you trust it more than your own." Fitch held that for a second. "That's harder than it sounds," he said. "Most right things are," she said. She walked out to the pad. Caster walked beside her, not ahead, not behind. Beside, exactly where he had been since day one. The helo was waiting. Submissions end with reports, with citations, with rooms full of people naming things formally. This one ended with a dog at heel, a warrant officer's approved request, and a rule that had been written into the way a team moved. Quietly, permanently, without announcement. In closed terrain, you listen to the one who can hear what you can't. You don't debate it. You don't wait for proof you can hold in your hands. You listen. You move. You come home. If someone in your life has ever been that signal, the one who saw what others missed, who held the line when the pressure said keep walking, this one's for them. They don't always get named, but they always matter.